We
Good
are
morning.
yeah, so happy you could join us. I'm a quiet fan of all of you. I said so. I've been low key stalking all of your great work. You, Donnie, Sosa, Tani, Black Women Talk Tech for a while, and it's just an honor to have you share with us today. I think one thing that's so unique about your work, Jasmine, is at the core of your work, you want to help people.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the whole purpose of it, right? The
yeah.
whole purpose is to actually help people in it, and it feels really good. And I would say too, I love bringing so many of these women together. Many are my friends. Me and Dawn have been friends. I've been going on 15 years now, so it's so good to just see you put this together. And I'm sure everyone who's tuning in can attest to what they're going to take away from here to be able to empower their business. So thank you.
Oh, wonderful. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you. This is your time to kind of talk about the work you're doing over at Gooder.
Definitely. Well, I want to just take you guys through the journey of Gooder and how I integrated tech into a social enterprise, which was something so many people thought was so crazy. And so my journey with Gooder starts really organically. I was feeding people that were experiencing hunger and homelessness here in Atlanta, Georgia, downtown. And I just drove through downtown one day and I just saw hundreds of people that were homeless. And I always get asked the question, what made you start feeding people? And I really don't have an answer. I mean, I really don't. It's just something pulled on my heartstrings in that moment. And I felt like I'm going to go home and I'm going to do something. And so, what started with this simple post on Facebook that said, I'm going to go out on Sunday. I'm going to feed people that are experiencing hunger and homelessness. And if you want to join me, come out. And I was calling it Sunday Soul because the idea was that I would bridge like a good meal that you would get after church or something like that on a Sunday. And then this mixture of like good old school soulful music, like James Brown and Aretha Franklin and the Temptations. And so that was my idea. And I started with just about 100 meals, and it was a spaghetti dinner. And I always laughed because I was so, even then, just trying to do something good for people. I had underestimated the time it would take. So I think I started cooking the spaghetti dinner like 2 hours before the event was supposed to start. And I always just remember, there just being spaghetti sauce and everything all over my kitchen when I came back because this wasn't cooking spaghetti dinner for like a family of four. Here I was cooking for 125 people. So it was a lot more noodles, a lot more meat, a lot more sauce. And I just still felt like I made a commitment I was going to go out there and do that. And so that first feeding, we fed about 125 people and they were so happy. And I started to see them dance and I could just tell that this meant a lot to them, that they were getting this hot meal, they were having like this level of service. I had just a few volunteers and I decided I was going to do this every other week. And so this was in 2013 and I did this for years before I ever started Gooder. But it was through this that the idea for Gooder was birthed. And the reality was, I was really kind of taking $5, $10, $15 donations and figuring out how to take $300 or $400 and feed 500 people, which is really where we got to at the height of this, because so many people just became aware and they knew that the food was good and they knew that a lot of love went into it. And I always, too, Crystal, I always had dignity and choice. I believe that people, just because they were experiencing homelessness didn't mean that, their religious convictions or their dietary restrictions went out the window. So at all of my feedings after that first one, I realized like, hey, I've got to have a chicken option. I've got to have a seafood option. I've got to have a beef option. And if I'm going to have pork, there are people that don't eat pork. So I typically would have 3 to 4 different entrees and then a plethora of side items. And I would ask volunteers to bring like desserts. And so what started happening is we would have people lined up for sometimes 2 to 3 hours just to get to the front of the line. And one day, we always would let women and children come first. And this man kind of got upset. And I went back and I talked to him and I said, sir, I've been cooking for the last 3 days. I promise you there's going to be enough food for you. And what he said was, if I don't eat today, like I don't know when I'm going to eat this week, because it dawned on me that Sundays were really, that's the last day of the weekend. A lot of people don't come out during the week because they have to work. And so he was telling me if he didn't eat this day, he didn't know when his next meal was coming. And I started thinking like, how often do I wait, 2 to 3 hours at a restaurant just to eat. And the reality was never, if there's a long wait, or if I can't get a reservation, then I'm going someplace else. And I said, this is wrong. Like, I'm making these people stand up and wait in line to have to, get a box of food that they have to eat in their hands. And I just started checking myself. And so from there, I created what was called the Sunday Soul pop-up restaurant. And the idea was that I would rent tables and chairs and linens, and I would get flowers donated from Trader Joe's, and I would make these menus and just print them up and give people like a dining experience. And so if we were out of seats, people would come and we could take their names and we could put them on a waiting list, and they didn't feel like they had to wait that whole time, and they could kind of come back. And it became really popular. And a video of one of those events actually went viral on Facebook. And so I woke up about a week after the event to thousands and thousands of comments and friend requests, and seeing that this video had, been shared over 1 million times and had hundreds and thousands of, comments amongst all these different pages and millions of views. And amongst the praise, there was one reoccurring question. People kept on saying, this is so amazing. Who donates the food? And the reality was nobody. I would coupon, I would price match. I always joke and say, I really am the reason that Walmart doesn't price match anymore, because I would get all of the circulars from every little grocery store. I mean, even the grocery store, if there was one location, I would have that circular and I would take it into Walmart and I would make them price match everything. And so when I saw that question being asked hundreds and hundreds of times, I thought, wow, it would be so cool if I could get this food donated. I'm spending 40 hours a week just cooking the food. I'm waking up at 2 a.m. to cook until, 10 p.m. And all this food is starting to go to waste. And so just a simple Google search of what happens with excess food at the end of the night really led me to see how much food goes to waste in this country. And I became really upset about that when I learned that 72 billion pounds of perfectly good food goes to waste while 40 million people go hungry. I just couldn't rationalize that. It just made me really upset. And so one of the things that people always ask me about Gooder is, why aren't you guys a nonprofit? And what I understood right away was that these businesses, and these are the businesses that all of us frequent on a day-to-day basis, the companies, BC before coronavirus where we worked at, that served lunch in their cafeterias, the college campuses, the grocery stores, the restaurants, the entertainment venues, the hotels, all of them are paying a waste management bill every month. And so they're paying to simply throw away perfectly good food. And I thought if they are paying a waste company, they could pay me to come up with a better use case of how this food will be used. And, like Isha said earlier, I am not a technical founder. And so I was intrigued with the emergence of the food delivery app. And so I was getting all of those referral codes from all my friends, like, try Uber Eats and use this code and get $10 off your first delivery, the Postmates, the Grubhubs. And I started thinking, wow, it would be really cool if I could create an app that would work in reverse to this, where when businesses had excess food, they could go on my app and request a pickup. We would get that food picked up and then delivered to a nonprofit. And, the food wouldn't go to waste. People wouldn't go hungry. And it made perfect sense to me. And so all of 2016, after that video went viral, I'm out here and I'm trying to get involved, and I'm going to Black Tech Week in Miami, and I'm trying to talk to different engineers. And so many people told me time and time again, this doesn't make sense. Oh, no one's going to pay for this. And I get that even till this day in talking to investors, this doesn't make sense. Even though I've proved, over the last 2.5 years since we've been in business, that we've generated millions in revenue. We've grown the team. We're in multiple cities. I can prove that this makes sense. A lot of people were still telling me it didn't. And the biggest mistake that I made in 2016 is I allowed people to tell me that. And I believed them because I said, well, they're in tech. They know, they're engineers. They're in this space. You're not. And so I just went back to doing my feedings. And it wasn't until I learned that one of my personal friends was experiencing hunger, and that really hurt me because this is somebody who was college educated, who was well-traveled. She was working at Good Morning America. She had toured with Zendaya and Alicia Keys, and she was living in New York City. and just decided to move to Atlanta with her husband to chase the American dream. They wanted to buy a house. She's like, hey, in Harlem, I'm never going to get to see my kid ride a school bus. He'll never play in a backyard. I'm going to move down south. All these movies are being filmed there. It's the Black Hollywood. I'll pick right back up. And so when she got to Atlanta, it became more about things like how many Instagram followers she had, or people saying like, I'll do your makeup for an Instagram shout out. And you can't feed your family that way. And so what happened is I visited her home, and, she's offering me some water. She opens her refrigerator and it's basically empty. And so often, we don't see what our faces look like. We don't see our reflection when we're having conversations with people. And so till this day, I never know what my face looked like. But, she turned around, she's pregnant with her second child, and she burst into tears. And she's like, I know what you're thinking. I try and keep meals and snacks in the house for Max and, goldfish and apple juice. And we're struggling. We just had to pay our water bill. And it was like $400 and the rent, and just, so she's just really just breaking down. And what I realized then is that, hunger was so much deeper than just the people I was feeding on the streets and the seniors that I was feeding in senior homes. It knew no bounds. And, too many people were having to make this critical decision. Am I going to pay for my bills, like my rent and utilities, or am I going to pay for food? And I was seeing that food was often the first to go. And so that was late 2016. And I decided I'm going to go and try and figure this out. I entered a hackathon at Georgia Tech. So, again, not having technical skills. But what I did, Crystal, and where this is so important, is I learned everything that I could. I tell people all the time, I went to the school of YouTube, and I would stay up until sometimes 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I would go to Y Combinator startup school, and I would watch everything. And then, they'd bring in a lot of speakers from different companies. And then I'd go research those speakers, and I would read Medium articles, and I would, look at all the free resources that were available. So I started using things like Google Forms and Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, and building out what this would look like. And so I entered this hackathon, a team of one. I always say, just get started. I was a team of one when I started this, and I applied for the program within an hour before the application closed. And so I'm in this design thinking session, and I'm, literally doing wireframes of what this app will look like. And I get about 4 or 5 students at Georgia Tech to kind of join my team, and they built me a clickable prototype. And I used that prototype all of 2017 to enter pitch competitions. Now, through the time when I was actually trying to raise the money, that was really my only recourse. My parents had just gotten divorced after 36 years. They had just put my sister through Spelman College. And so I didn't have friends and family. I didn't have like this circle of people I could reach out to. So pitch competitions, very much like Dawn, became kind of my way of life. She would send them to me, I would send them to her, and we would just start entering them. And we would try and never compete against each other. And, I used those pitch competitions to actually raise the funding to get the first version of the technology built. And I didn't get it out to market until 2018. So a lot of times I tell people, even though Gooder started in 2017, that whole first year was foundational for me. And what you could do during the time, and what I did, is I proved the model before technology. So before I had the app, I would have businesses send me a text message when they had food to donate. I would drive my car, which I no longer own because I learned so much in that process, and how to package food was the number one thing. And my car started smelling like black beans and meat and everything else. But I would go and pick up the food myself. I would drive it to a local nonprofit. I would take a picture of the donation. I would get a donation receipt. I would send it back to the customer, and then give them kind of like a record of everything that was being donated. And so through that process, which was very manual and just using a lot of the free tools that were out there, I discovered something else that I was doing. I was giving the customers real insight into their waste that they had never had before. Because if you constantly just put everything in a trash can and throw it away, you don't know what you're wasting on a constant basis. One of the first customers I helped discover this was Turner Broadcasting Systems, and now they're Warner Media Group. But I was able to show them that their number one most wasted thing was pork. And what they learned was so many people on their campus had given up pork They were, turning to being vegans and vegetarians. It was no longer a popular thing. And so on a daily basis, they're wasting ribs or whatever their pork item was. They always wasted it because nobody was eating it. And had they not had my insights and those analytics I was able to give them, who knows? They probably would still be making pork until this day to the level that they were. And so starting with what you have is really important. And then understanding that there are so many free tools out there that you could get started with. I was literally living in a 1-bedroom apartment. A lot of times I would, figure out like, how is I going to even pay my bills? I would sometimes enter pitch competitions and I was like, you've got to win this because this prize money could help you not only keep the business going, but it can also pay your rent. And so that kind of level of just being committed to your business is extremely important. So some of the challenges of utilizing technology for me was I didn't know all of the language. And so what I learned to do is just ask for help. I knew that I remember the very first hackathon, they said, well, you're going to build your MVP. And, I thought that meant most valuable player. That's all I knew. Like, because I was a sports person. I was like, that's going to be me. Like, you're the founder of this, you're going to go. And so that level of just not knowing everything, but being willing to learn everything that I could. And so, looking at all the verbiage and trying to ask the questions. And I would meet with any mentor, anyone that would meet with me, and they would give me ideas. And it's so funny, as I'm sitting at my desk, I'm looking at all of these notebooks that I have. I mean, so many notebooks, and they would just be filled with just notes that people would give me. And I would make these notes and I would take them and I would just go and start, like, literally they would say, do A, B, C, and D. I would do A, B, C, and D. And I wouldn't reach back out to that mentor until I had done it and until what I had learned from it was important. The other thing is that there's so many free technology tools available to early stage founders. The main thing is just to really set your business up and understand, like, every major tech company. So whether that's Amazon with AWS, Microsoft, Google, they all have some kind of Google for startups, Microsoft for startups. There's always a program that you can get into to use their tools for free at the beginning, because the goal is that they want you, just like any investor, to be a really big company and get so used to using their technology that you constantly come back to it. So seeking out those free tools, free seminars. And I would say how technology has really helped my business is that it's made everything really clear for me. Everything that I was doing very manually, now I could just do everything via tech. And it's really helped me scale. It's helped me get to new markets, places that I never would have imagined Gooder serving in. We are launching this week with a really major pharmaceutical company across 3 states. And, we could do that without us having to be there. So with Gooder being based in Atlanta, via technology, via the platform that we've built, the app that we've built, now we can launch in another market and see what's taking place real time. I did have a CTO in the beginning, and I will say that so many people told me, like, in order to be successful, you've got to have a tech founder. And I basically did everything but, like, stand on the corner with a sign that said, like, please come and be my co-founder. To find one. And I ended up finding someone who wasn't a good fit, who wasn't a true CTO. And I had to let that person go early on. And it was really a good decision for me because I didn't understand so much. So they would be telling me, like, oh, I'm coding every night, and months and months and months would go by. And I would ask those mentors who are critical to find. And I found these mentors on Twitter, LinkedIn. So these weren't like my personal network friends. Like, I literally would look at people's handles and I would say, okay, their bio says their product at Google. And I would follow them and say, hey, I'm building a product in Atlanta. This is what I'm doing. And I would say to them, hey, my co-founder has been telling me she's been coding for 6 months and I haven't seen anything. And they would say, well, do you have a repository set up? Are you guys on GitHub? And these would be things I had never heard of. And so I would go and I would say, like, okay, well, where's your repository? What are you guys building? And then when that started to happen, that founder kind of became a little, upset and miffed with me because I was asking the questions. But ultimately, had someone not told me to ask those questions, I could have been in that relationship with that founder that co-founder, if you will, for years and just really been behind. And so I outsourced the first version of my tech to a local development firm here in the Atlanta area. Then I brought on a product manager. We continued to outsource it. And now we're finally bringing on like another lead engineer. And then we're going to let them kind of build out this engineering team. So there have been many, many challenges of trying to utilize technology, a lot of it because I didn't understand the ins and outs of everything. But the biggest thing that I did is that I tried to learn as much as I can. And I'm still learning every single day. You know, I don't know everything, but I'm here to learn. And so I want to encourage everybody in this time, especially if you are a social entrepreneur, you know, thinking of just since March, Gooder is now approaching almost 3 million meals that we've gotten to people. And that's all been via using technology. You know, we've now kind of pivoted and made a route logistics system that actually delivers food directly to the doors of people. So very similar to Amazon or the post office, we are actually routing food along specific zip codes and neighborhoods to feed as many people as we can. And we're doing this all through technology. And it's something that, you know, has been life-changing for me, but more so life-changing for others. And so you can scale your business much faster by using technology. And even if you don't have a lot of money, you can get started with nothing. And I tell people that all the time. My accountant was probably like negative $300 when I started Gooder 3 years ago. And now, you know, this year alone, Gooder will probably do $4 to $5 million in revenue. And this is with a very small team, with very little. We've only raised $1 million so we've been very capital efficient. So everything we've been able to do has started small. We haven't had the MIT and the Caltech and the Stanford graduate that came and built this technology for us. We found other ways to use technology. We figured out ways to do it for free, ways to, you know, enter hackathons and, you know, any kind of program. Another big tool here is I would sit with all the companies like Pivotal, any company you could think of, they go on beach, and now's a perfect time because of everything that's happening. And a lot of times, you know, Salome, which is another kind of, kind of tech company, and they do a lot of consulting for big companies like JP Morgan, like the Home Depots. Well, sometimes they're in between clients and they have what they call office hours. I have worked on so many office hours with a lot of these companies to get small little aspects of my product built, things on my website built, and I've gotten that done for free. And if you're doing anything in the social impact space, you know, don't be afraid to ask for help. And don't be afraid to take advantage of any kind of free resources that are available for you, because it's important, you know, and I'm really excited to see where we will go. We have a really huge product roadmap, so we got to raise more money to build it. But technology is life-changing, and it can also be people and world-changing. And so if anybody who's listening right now has an idea that is about solving a real problem for people, which mine was hunger, and the reduction of food waste, you know, I just want to encourage you guys to get started. And, you know, Crystal, I'll turn it over to you, and let's spend a few minutes with Q&A, and would love for anybody that has questions to just connect with me. I'm Jasmine Crow on everything, so really easy to find. And I'm looking forward to figuring out how I can help more people become the next social entrepreneur to solve real problems.
Wow. Jasmine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You are amazing. I was sitting here trying not to cry because, you know, my work has been around social entrepreneurship. And oftentimes when I try to describe it, people are like, oh, do you make any money doing that? But you are, I think you are our face of it, because people can, let me just say this, Black people understand intrinsically, we always want to help, right?
All the time.
All the time, right? And I do. And so, you know, so I get that. And so I'm just so excited that you are a living, breathing example that you can do both good and do well at the same time.
Yes, I love it.
You know, that they don't have to be like two opposites in the world, but you can actually make money and make the world a better place. So I just want to say publicly, I am so proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So proud of you. And anything our community can do to help you continue to scale, girl, call me, bug me. We're here for you.
I love it. You know, what you said too is everything. And that's one of the stories I would have to tell to investors. a lot of times, right, is that you can do well by doing good. And what I would say is that my business is a force for good. It offers a triple bottom line. It's a win-win-win for businesses. And what I had to do early on is I had to change that story, right, Crystal? Because everybody doesn't look like us, and everyone does that writes checks certainly doesn't look like us or think like us, nor have they experienced the plights of the people that we're trying to serve. And that knows, like hunger, the problem I'm trying to serve knows no discrimination, right? It affects people of color at much higher rates. But I can tell you, we serve hundreds and hundreds of people that are white, that are Hispanic, that are Asian. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, but what I had to learn to do is talk first about the business. So if you are a social entrepreneur, talk first about this business case. And what I had to start talking about was how much money is spent on waste every year and how much of that waste is food. And so when I would tell investors that, then it would kind of make sense. I would say, hey, the waste industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and it never goes away. JP Morgan, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, nobody's going to ever say, let's cut out waste this year. Let's just keep all of our trash at all of our locations. That never happens. And that's why the waste industry is so big. And then when you look at how much of the waste industry is food, then I started to kind of see that this would be an opportunity. But you're totally right. A lot of people always think about the money. And, before anything else, I always thought about the cause, and I always believed that the money would come. And, sure enough, it started to come, but I still would tell everybody to think about that cause.
Right. Very good. Well, Jasmine, when you started to pivot, because I actually heard you pitch at X Prize, we were both there.
Yeah.
Probably 3 chocolate drops, right?
There was only a 3. I mean, there were and Pharrell was one of them. So that wasn't even a good, because he took the shine away from us.
I think Lupe Fiasco, there was a few others, but
Lupe was there.
But my point is, you've been able to take good work and talk about the business case first, right? So that's one thing. And then I would just say, secondly, as you started to pivot, how did you kind of think about integrating tech, right? Was it first because you wanted more efficiency? Did you want to scale? But what was it that made you start to kind of think about, okay, there's this room or space to integrate technology? What was that like? Where was that first, or where did that come from?
Yeah, so I think it was definitely about the scaling piece. For me, it was about being able to scale. And then I was just inspired. Like I said, I went with my friend Dawn, to a tech conference, and I started seeing and hearing like that there were not enough Black tech founders. And then I would hear from people that were in the tech community, and I would think like, I want to be part of this. Like that was a big thing for me, is trying to be part of it. Where I really thought about it is that I did it first, Crystal, with no technology. See, so, when you're going out and you're putting everything in your car and you're driving and you're doing it as a person of one, when you start to see that technology can make it grow a lot faster, that's what made me want to scale and get into the tech industry really quickly, because I believed that the company could grow. And I felt like that was just the wave of where businesses were going, right? If I didn't have a tech product or something that a company, a manager, whoever that person was that I sold to, that they could go back and look at and see across all the sites that are using the product, what's being donated, what's going to compost, what's going to hog farms, what's going to energy, and really see what's taking place with their food waste. They were not going to be able to really have a grasp on the value of what I was building. And I think that's what made me know that tech was going to be super important. It's just, it was all about scale.
You were like, I want to do more. So, Jasmine, I mean, you've been generous with your time this morning. How can people find you beyond this session? I don't know if there's a website they should go to. You want to share something in chat? But I think living in this moment of pandemic with all this uncertainty, you're going to be very busy. And I say that I'm happy, but there's also this reality that so many people are going to need help, right?
Absolutely.
So
I was actually about to put my email into the chat group, and I just see 3 questions. I'll answer them really quickly. Rosalind asked, do you work with nonprofit organizations? Absolutely. I mean, Gooder has over 30,000 nonprofits in our network. We're in 42 states and 17 countries are represented. So obviously we're not everywhere, so we can't serve every nonprofit, but yeah, that's a huge partner of a lot of our food donations go directly to nonprofits. So you could go to gooder.co, not gooder.com, and that's GOODR .co, and you can click on register as a nonprofit, just upload your information, and then as soon as we get customers within typically a 5 to 10 mile radius of where your nonprofit address is located at, we would contact you for food donations. So please sign up there. Someone asked me, Tavia asked, can you discuss your decision to pursue B Corp certification? Oh yeah, I mean, that is the hardest thing ever. So do not take B Corps lightly. That application took us about a year to get through. But what I wanted to make sure that we did is that we were very transparent in everything that we did. And because we were going to be raising money as a venture company, but doing something good, I never wanted that kind of distinction of like, oh, they take all this money and, but they're a big tech company. I wanted people to understand that we have 3 things that we put first. And so that's people, planet, and then profit, right? So we are for people, for planet, for profit, but we wanted to do things differently. So like everyone that works with Gooder, even as a starting salary, makes $15 an hour for us, because how could I be in a business that is all about helping people escape poverty and hunger if my employees, couldn't even make a decent living for themselves? And so I chose to be a B Corp because it makes everything that we do be very transparent. We had to put a lot of records out. You'd see how much money we take and put towards the problems that we're solving, as opposed to fancy things like, corporate jets and things of that nature. So it was a strategic decision. And we are one of the few Black B Corps. There's a few others like Shea Moisture and others, but we were one of the very first, and we're the only Black female led B Corp in Georgia, in the state as a whole. We do accept donations, and people could donate to us via our website. We have a link on there, and that is strictly to go to families through our COVID relief fund. But it's not for like our traditional Gooder. We don't accept donations for that, but we definitely do have a COVID relief fund where we're helping families. And what company did you reach out to in order to create your app? I reached out to quite a few. There was one called Monkey. What was the first one that we went? It wasn't, what was it called? I think it was called App Monkey. They were here in Atlanta. They worked with us. A company called Trinesis was another company that we worked with as well. They were offshore. And then really, as soon as you do a profile on Crunchbase and say you're a tech company or put that in your bio on LinkedIn, you'll probably get 1,000 messages on a daily basis. And you really just have to do your vetting and go from there. Someone says, my question is regarding how you protected your IP concept while engaging in early hackathons, pitch competitions, and conversations. Really in the early days, you just really can't even do it. It's really just a gamble, and you got to sprint out first and be the best. Even a lot of times people will say like, can you make investors sign an NDA? And the reality is an investor is going to see so many pitch decks. They're not always going to sign an NDA. You enter a pitch competition, there could be 100 investors in there, and people, maybe they have venture labs and venture studios that take it back and go and say like, hey, we should create something like this. It is a gamble that you take. And, for me, all I knew is that if I talked about it the most, if I was upfront and out front the most about this problem, and if my company became a company that when people thought about food waste and thought about hunger, if someone ever came and tried to kind of take that, people would say like, oh, they're doing what Gooder's doing, or they're, that's the same idea that Gooder has. But it was tough. It was really tough. It's a tough thing to be able to protect your IP. Once you actually are established, then there's attorneys for that. There's a lot more things that you could get trademarked. But in the beginning, it's really hard. It's hard to do that. And so, yeah, if you guys want to follow up with me, what would you be doing if you didn't build Gooder? I would still be feeding people. I mean, I've been in this social impact space for many, many years. I've always worked with nonprofits, celebrities to start their nonprofits. So I've been doing that since 2010. And if I didn't start Gooder, I would still be doing something of that lane. Last thing I would say is just, follow up with me. I'm Jasmine Crow on everything. You guys can also follow us at Gooder Co. And we are gooder.co is our website. And
Wow.
thank you again to Crystal.
Thank you so much. And everyone, this wraps our version of adult cartoon and serial. But no, in all seriousness, I want to thank JP Morgan Chase and Company, our friends over there, Kate Costa, Kelly Ann Kilpatrick, and Ted Archer, for recognizing the importance of elevating these conversations about investing in entrepreneurs by helping them become more tech enabled. And I want to thank all the amazing businesses in New Orleans that have journeyed with me over this past year to help make this conversation an even greater reality. Um, if you have any questions, you know how to reach us. Shoot us an email, go to our website. We look forward to hearing from you. This has been wonderful, and I hope that you will continue to scale and advance your work by integrating technology. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.